Good evening. I call to order the York County School Board special meeting for Monday, May 8th. Good evening, everyone. We've got a little bit of warm weather, cool weather, but it's nice. It's not raining now, so hopefully we're just on the side to stay warm. We have 3 presentations this evening. I'm going to turn to Dr. Shandor for all 3. First is the overview of the food services program, then the 2017 to 18 meal prices, and the student handbook.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood. Good evening, board members. This evening's first presentation, Ms. Michelle Knotts, I'm going to ask her to come to the podium from Sodexo. She's the Sodexo General Manager. She's going to present some information regarding the food service program. She's also going to share some information about new food concepts that will be added to the program for the 2017-2018 school year. Ms.
Thank
Knotts?
you. Good evening.
How are
Ms.
you?
Haywood, thank you. Good. Ms. Haywood and school board members, Dr. Shandor, thank you for having us here this evening. To my left is Amanda Fowle. She is our Sodexo Operations Manager, joining us as well. And I'm happy tonight just to give you an overview of our food service program, things that we're currently doing, and some wonderful ideas that we have that we're going to be introducing in the new school year. So currently, did you know SubConnection is provided in all secondary schools. SubConnection is similar to a Subway concept with our freshly baked breads. Those fresh baked breads are also served daily in all of our schools. Our hamburger buns, hot dog buns are locally sourced through a company named Flowers. Our Department of Defense, better known as our DoD produce program, allows for the offering of fresh seasonal fruits and vegetables all year round. We currently are offering fruit smoothies as a fruit component in all secondary schools. Fruit and yogurt parfaits are served as an option as a complete meal because they are served with a combination of yogurt, fresh fruit, and nut-free granola. And our chicken products are processed through Tyson Foods, all of our chicken products, including chicken patties, chicken nuggets, popcorn chicken, tenders, and drumsticks. So some pictures that we put together here for you. The first 2 pictures on the top are examples of the SubConnection offerings. Again, it's an interactive way to have the children choose exactly what they're having. Similar, like I said, to Subway, multiple toppings for vegetables, multiple options for meats, and several cheeses to choose from, again, on the fresh baked breads. We also, on the top right, is a picture of one of our fruit parfaits, and that would change from blueberry, strawberry banana, pineapple, whatever that seasonal fruit is at that time. Again, served with a nut-free granola, so that a student can come up and just pick that one option, which is a wonderful, delicious-looking parfait, and it is a complete meal within itself. And then other daily options are garden salads that are offered on all of our lines. We have grab-and-go entree salads there, offered as a complete meal, and then photos of our chicken patties and our chicken tenders, again processed through Tyson Foods. And I keep bringing up processed through Tyson Foods, and I want to just talk about that for just a minute. Processing is something new for York County. We just started that in the school year that we're in right now, and what that enables us to do is literally say to the farmers that we would like you to grow X amount of chickens, and they will dictate the time that it's available to us, and then we tell them we would like X amount of pounds in a nugget, X amount of pounds in a tender, and these are whole muscle breast meat products that we are able to give our children. It's not what you're going to find when you crack open a nugget at a Wendy's. When you see these, and you can see from these pictures, they're the highest quality chicken product that we can get. So some things that we are going to be introducing as we roll into the new school year that we're really excited about is action stations. And we say action stations because today, if you're out there, the buzzword, one of the hottest concepts right now is something like a Chipotle or something like a Blaze Pizza, where you're coming in and you are choosing what you want, the ingredients, and it's being built right in front of you. So we want to take that concept and incorporate it into our cafeterias by rolling out mac and cheese stations, where it's not just your average mac and cheese by no means. It's 3 to 4 different types of mac and cheese. Same thing with a meatball station, 3 to 4 different types of meatballs where you can come up and make that into a meatball grinder. You can have meatballs over pasta, Korean barbecue, Asian fusion, Pho noodle soup, which is actually pronounced pho, noodle soup interaction as well, and then Salad Creations. Salad Creations is a station where the children are picking from several different types of lettuces, again, building from multiple different types of vegetables, and we are tossing it and creating it right in front of them, and they choose their dressing and present them with the final meal. Personal pan pizzas, we're gonna roll out in our secondary schools. We are also, currently, we've started on a couple of our elementary schools, Coventry and Bethel Manor, where we're rolling out a new clubhouse concept. It's a new marketing concept. That clubhouse concept, what it does is it creates a warm, a friendly environment that brings people together. And they do that by using warm earth tones, visions of the outdoors. It's really a wonderful concept for elementary schools. Second chance breakfast grab and go, something we've initiated and started this year. We will continue to roll out next year, giving our students a opportunity if they're running late or the school bus is running late, they're dropped off late, a cart or an area to go where they can grab and go and have a nutritious breakfast. And then we're also happy to use grant money that was awarded to us that we had applied for to use on a new breakfast cart that we're going to roll out in at Grafton High School next year. Picture of that cart that we're going to purchase is there to the left. And pictures of the personal pan pizza is above that will roll out in our secondary schools. And that action station, you see there, we mentioned the Salad Creations. That would be the station where they're choosing their toppings as we're walking along and building that for them. And then a photo of what that meatball station would be. 3 different types of meatball, creating a wonderful, nutritious meal.
So all of this is behind glass. They don't touch any of this, correct?
Correct.
You want to save your questions, May, until you finish, and then we can come back for questions, or you want it as we go?
I think she has one more slide.
Okay.
And then meals sold, a review here, I'm comparing last year to the current year that we're in. So across the nation, really, lunch meals have run pretty flat and stagnant, and a lot of that has to do with regulations. But here, we've actually been able to increase that. Lunch meals is 2%, but breakfast meals is really where we have made the most impact, and that's thanks from the support that we have with our principals and administration, and really getting behind breakfast in the classroom and continuing to move forward with that, and it truly has made the difference here. So at this time, I would like to open it up to any questions that anybody would have that I'd be happy to answer.
Tell me about
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
No, I just had a couple. First of all, do we have breakfasts being served at all of our sites now? All school sites, elementary, middle, and high school?
Breakfast is served at all of our
Yes.
sites, yes.
Okay, good. And staffing, like at the secondary level, I mean, you're deploying some really cool stuff. I think we may see some percentages increase. Staffing, how, I mean, if there's more hands-on now staff has to build or has to prepare that interactive meal for the student coming through the line, do we have enough staff allocated to the school and the cafeterias to handle the load of extra work possibly?
Absolutely. By no means we would need to add staff, especially when you're talking about action stations. But the comparison to that, or the give and take to that, is this is going to help to increase our participation in the lunch program.
Okay.
So that's going to justify the additional hours needed on a daily or weekly basis for those stations.
Perfect.
The personal pan pizza, would that be considered a lunch, or would that be a la carte, or how does that work?
It actually is it can be both.
Okay.
So it's still a whole grain pizza using low sodium, low fat cheese, turkey pepperoni. But the great thing, and this has really been a proven success in Spotsylvania is another district that Sodexo runs a food service in, and they've rolled that out and has had tremendous success. The children like something that they can grab, it's their own, they're lifting the box, and there's just a sense of satisfaction with that. So we will make that available both as a meal and then also as a la carte.
Have you heard anything about the legislation, if it's going to be tweaked or changed any to ease up on the requirements? Do you know anything about that?
I know probably what everyone else knows because we've all read the same article. It is a proclamation that has been signed, so we are still awaiting, my understanding from my superiors in Sodexo, that sometimes these things take a little bit of time, but everyone is very, very hopeful. The one area that they spoke about in there was Target 1 and Target 2 sodium levels. That would have the biggest impact on taste that we have seen in over 25 years in this industry. I'm happy to say we currently, and have been since Sodexo has come aboard, we've been in Target 1. We needed to do that in order to be 6 Sense certified 4 years ago. So we have maintained that target, and it looks from what we're reading that that's where we will now remain as opposed to moving into Target 2, which would have actually reduced the sodium levels by half, moving into Target 2.
And to piggyback on Cindy's question, so that pizza is a reimbursable meal in itself.
Not in itself, no,
Not in
Mark.
itself, okay,
We would encourage it to be a reimbursable meal.
By
But in
adding-
order to do that, it has to have a half a cup of fruit or a half a cup of vegetable in order for it to be reimbursable.
Okay. But you would encourage, that's encouraged.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I love this sub connection. I think that's a great idea. Can you tell me about the meat? Is that what quality is that? Is that like a boar's head or something like at Subway? I know they have, I think it's a boar's head brand.
It's not Boar's Head. A lot of our brands are very high quality, either Jennie-O, and we have some Sara Lee brands. And all turkey breast is what we slice, which is a Jennie-O product. And these are vendors they bid through Sodexo and then are awarded that account, and then we order them through Cisco. But it's all a very high end, and things are available. Turkey ham is what's made available to us. Just in an effort, again, to keep us into the sodium levels that we need to be in.
So it's not imitation anything?
Oh,
it's the
no,
real
sir,
deal.
it is not.
Looks
My
good.
question's kind of centered on having just finished town hall meetings. And you answered one of the questions with regards to the regulations, because that was another question from the students, taste and quantity. One of their concerns was time in food line, and I know that is respective of each individual school. As you move into your stations, your action stations, and your sub-areas, do you foresee that slowing down? If it's a salad bar or whatever, slowing down the process, that there would be that additional concern for students longer in the cafeteria line?
Ms. Haywood, this is where we would definitely introduce additional staff to make that a reality. We're very well aware of the minimal amount of time that the students have to get through the line. And sometimes we're challenged with things structurally that, we just have to do the best that we can within the parameters that we're in. However, we still believe that there are schools where we have options to move outside of the traditional cafeteria line and maybe bring it into the cafeteria where the students are eating in forms of action stations, and that's something that Amanda and I are looking into now. So they're great concepts and they're going to be wildly popular, I'm sure of that. But we also know that in order for it to truly be a success, a student needs to get through that line in 6 minutes or less with the product in hand, and we will make sure that happens.
The items that were under the action stations, are they the same items will be provided in each of the 4 high schools, or will you change the food per action station?
A little bit of both. So we're gonna have some rotating stations. So when we mentioned the mac and cheese, where you would come up to a station and there are 3 different types or 4 different types of mac and cheese to choose from, that would be a concept that would be in that station for a month. And then we rotate that out with the meatball concept,
Okay.
where it's 3 to 4 different.
And your
Types
grab
of
and go
meatballs.
bags, where would they eat those, in the classroom?
I'm sorry,
The grab and go bags.
where would they eat them? Ideally, yes, in the classroom.
So
Absolutely.
that's working with classroom teachers to say they can eat there.
Yes.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, I love the concept. It's almost like knowing that food service is a standalone. Which do you go first? Which, the cart before the horse? Do we bring people on in the beginning, put out that investment, and do what, to make it run smoothly from the beginning? Or do we wait and see? Again, the day I was at Bruton, and I can only speak for Bruton, principal for a day, and we were in the cafeteria. I watched the number of lunch bags, their personal fancy lunch bags, and then the number of kids going into the cafeteria line. So again, how do we make it appealing, cost effective, that they want to forget those lunch bags at home and buy at school? So that would be the ongoing, the
Absolutely.
battle.
And I think Bruton's a perfect example, because in that cafeteria, there's a lot of room to build off that line and bring it into the students. So I say it a lot in this
Good,
business. The wonderful thing about this business is let's try it and let's do it right. We can always change it if we need to. But I think if we don't put the investment involved up front and first, then it's really not a true win with the students. So that's kind of our approach to that.
Talk a little bit about the promotional side of getting this information out to the students, the customers. What do we do there? I mean, word of mouth will eventually, or the kids walk in the room or in the cafeteria, they see something different. But do we need to do any promotional pieces? I know
That's a
y'all-
great point. And a lot of times I will reach out to principals to help me with that as well. Amanda is wonderful with getting flyers out, whether we're doing our barbecues at the high schools and getting that hung and posted to start to generate the excitement, and the staff talks it up with our students. But then I also lean on, I'll go to the principals, because there may be things going on that I'm not aware of that I can piggyback on, whether it's with a flyer or have a staff member there to talk to the students if parents are coming in. The website, morning announcements is really what we try to do for communication. And I'm open, if I'm not thinking of something else, please let us know.
I'm just thinking like even at the beginning of the school year when they're having that back to school PTA, every parent in the community is basically there with their child, or even some cases without their child. But to have a Sodexo booth set up along with the PTA and others to say, hey, here's what we're doing different in our elementary schools or our middle school and high schools. Of course, more parents come to the elementary school PTA things at the beginning of the school year, but still, back to school nights, things like that.
We do actually, Mark, we do staff our back to school nights with a
Okay.
staff member. We get that scheduled well in advance so that we know it's usually the cafeteria manager that sets up either right there in the cafeteria and opens up the doors and is there welcoming the parents to talk to them about all kinds of aspects of food service.
Do you have any samples that they could see of the actual food that their children would eat?
We don't right now. Usually we would do a cookie tray or something like that just as a welcome item. But that's certainly something I can look into, because I think that's a wonderful idea, seeing that we've got fresh deliveries already coming in, and we can certainly execute against that.
Now, the proclamation that we've all read about that the government's looking at,
Yes.
I guess they're looking at to lessen the restrictions of the sodium content of school lunches. Before that last one came into effect, I mean, were our lunches not nutritious, or were they bad lunches, or would they still be good if we went back, if we reverted back to more sodium in the lunches? I'm not saying, pour a whole bucket of salt in them, but to make them tasteful.
Well, certainly they were not bad, but it's hard for me to speak on that because I wasn't here personally.
Right.
I can only speak on what we did, and it was, boots on the ground running when we came in to get the schools up and ready for the first day of school. But from what I saw and pictures that had been shared with me, no, I don't think it was bad. We work within the parameters that we have to work within. I think where we like to challenge ourselves, and the support that we have with Sodexo, where I have a team of chefs, we have a team of dietitians. My degrees are in business and hotel and restaurant and institutional management. So it's wonderful that I can reach out to people that are gonna show and redo recipes for us that introduce fresh herbs and fresh spices, so that we, even though the sodium limit may be lower, we're still trying to continue to have that taste and that flavor profile come out of the foods.
If I remember correctly, the first year we went to the federal guidelines, we heard the most complaints from football players. They didn't get enough lunch, they wanted a second meal, that was the consensus that I heard then.
Calories.
Calories.
Calories were cut.
I think when we look at our youth and the number of kids who are overweight, and once that happens, we're seeing in the medical profession diabetes and high cholesterol at a much younger age than we used to see when kids were out running around, they're in the house, some situations afraid to go out or just in front of a video game. So that with increased activity, if not, we're gonna have a lot of kids who are overweight and the diabetes in elementary and middle school that we don't want.
One last thing, just a hats off to the Sodexo staff and you and your team. I can say this year, I've gotten no phone calls reference to food service. The town hall, we got some,
Yeah.
the comments from, they'd rather have the Pizza Hut or the Chick-fil-A in their building serving. But y'all do a fabulous job, your staff does a fabulous job. When I walk into the schools, mostly elementary schools, but I mean, they're happy. I mean, they're greeting those students that walk through those lines, those cafeteria ladies, they look at them as their own children or grandchildren. So it's, y'all do a great job.
Thank you very much.
And I don't even know how we as a board could help support with the advertisement. And I say that because of the town hall meetings, we have come back in the past and kind of summarized and pulled together those same kind of comments that came from all 4 high schools. And if that was a consensus, then how do we as a board, because I told the young folk that we would come together and look at the areas of concern that they had, and as a board, discuss it and get it back. So I don't even know if something like that is a follow-up to what they voiced at a town hall meeting versus we go in and we listen to them and don't do anything
Right.
about, it's just another activity. So that may be something to see how we can partner with that.
Great,
But thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
Thank you,
time.
Michelle.
Thank you.
thank you.
We have the next presentation, Dr. Shandor is gonna be looking at meal prices.
Yes, so now that we just saw the menu and all the wonderful pictures, now let's talk about the cost of those. So Dr. James, Chief Operations Officer, is going to present some proposed meal prices. Dr. James.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Ms. Haywood, members of the board, I will share with you a proposal about meal prices for next year. I'll also give you some background, contextual information about how we arrived at that point, and then also some steps of moving forward with our meal prices. As you know, or you may not know, the current price are $2.60 for elementary and $2.70 for secondary students. That's middle school and high school. Also, we get reimbursed for all types of meals from the federal government. You can see the chart here shows you that for a free meal, we reimburse $3.16 from the federal government. For a paid meal, it's 30 cents. For a reduced price meal, it's $2.76. So if you look at this, the difference between a paid meal and a free meal is $2.86. That's a milestone, that's a marker for us. Because with that, the federal government says, if you charge less than $2.86 for your lunches, then you need to increase the price of the lunch. So with that, then we have to go through a formula to do that. But to actually meet that requirement, if you charge less than $2.86, you can do it in 2 ways. Increase the price of paid meals, or non-federal funds, you can add that to the food service account. That would be from the general operating budget. As you know, one of the economies that we've seen as a school division with the outsourcing, the amount of money we have taken from the operating budget to go into food service. So that's another important point for us as we look at all of this. So with that, the Department of Education gives us a paid lunch equity tool, where Michelle and her staff, along with Kim Roman, put a lot of data into this tool to determine if we need to make a price adjustment. And we've done that now, I would say probably 6 or 7 years. You probably heard me say this many times during this work session about that tool. So with that, it was determined that we need a 10 cents increase in the price of breakfast and lunch. However, if you meet certain criteria in your food service program, then you can apply for a waiver from the Department of Education to not increase the price. Right now, we currently have a waiver before the Virginia Department of Education, the Nutrition and Wellness Program, to see if we qualify for the waiver. If not, if we don't qualify, then we're going to be mandated to increase the lunch prices by 10 cents.
When do we know the result of that?
Hopefully, this should come back to you for approval at the May regular meeting. Hopefully by then, I'm hopeful that we'll have word from the state of whether or not we qualify. If we qualify, then the recommendation to you for approval is going to be different than what I'm going to present to you tonight. So hopefully we'll get that back with the next 2 weeks, we'll know where we're going. So to require for the exemption or the waiver, these factors all have to come into play. Meal patterns have been certified. That's one of the things that we had to do some time ago with our meal patterns, to have it certified by the Virginia Department of Education. With that, of course, we got a 6 cents per meal because every meal we sold, because our meals were certified. Michelle and her staff sends the meal plans and all the dietary information to the state to look at the meal patterns to see if our meals are going to be certified. So that's very important for us. Also, the food service balance. The VDOE recommends that we keep 3 months operating budget. That amount of cash in that operating fund. So you can start up in beginning of the school year before you start to gain in the revenue. So your funds, your food service program should operate. The kind of snacks we serve, they have to be smart snacks in the schools. Any deficiencies that you may have had in the last federal review, we had not. During the last federal review, all of those deficiencies would have to have been addressed. And then they look at the overall quality of your food service program. Is it sufficient enough to warrant the waiver? Because if they deem that it's not, then of course, they want you to then bring your food service program up to par before they can grant a waiver. So that's the process that they're going to go through to look at our food service program, just to see if in fact we can be exempt from that requirement. I know I said a lot. Any questions about that before I move on?
I'm not sure if it's
I'm
going
gonna
to
keep
be.
my thoughts to myself on all that.
Okay.
You know, this is another example, I'm gonna say it anyway. This is another example of how there's a lot of people at the federal and state level that are regulating the heck out of local school districts to decide what's gonna be on a $2.60 meal handed to an elementary school child for lunch. And yes, we have to be nutritious, and yes, we have to make sure we're meeting, we want the issues with our young people today. But I sit there and I just listen to you talk about these people are regulating this and these people, we gotta get this. This is a lot of people have a lot of jobs doing a lot of things that are regulating these local school districts to death.
Right. Okay. With that, we'll move on to meal price increases for next year. At the elementary, you can see that there's a 10 cents increase. You see what the current prices are now, and you see what the proposed prices would be. And in this, of course, the reduced meal prices are going to remain the same for breakfast and lunch. You see 30 and 40 cents respectively. So you can see what the 10-cent increase would do to the prices at the elementary level. And the next slide shows you what the 10-cent increase would do to prices at the secondary level. And of course, we have the same footnote about breakfast and lunch and what that increase would be.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you look back a year prior to, say, 15, 16,
Yes, ma'am.
and we increased prices to what we see for 16, 17,
Okay.
did we see a drop in the number of lunches being served between the year prior and 16, 17?
I don't have the information right now, but I can certainly get that to you.
Makes me
But
wonder
if-
if parents were concerned about the prices going up then, did we see more bag lunches coming to school?
Sure.
And then if it's now gonna go up another 10 cents, do we take a gamble that there may be a decrease in
Right.
the
So we,
number of?
so we
Well,
can
there was
get
a
you.
2% increase in
Yeah,
lunches
shared across.
that y'all reported out from last year to this year, correct?
12 for
12 for
breakfast.
breakfast, but I know that y'all were doing some real creative things with the
Yeah.
breakfast program, so that probably was added to that. But to piggyback on that, I wanted to ask this question. Over the past 5 years, let's say, or 3 years, 5 years, have we've increased our lunch prices every year?
Yes, we have.
I don't think there's been a year we haven't had this question come before us,
we-
and we talk about it, it bothers me every time. In relative terms, 10% is not the world, but it's 5 years worth, so have we gone up 50 or 60 cents in 5 years? I don't know what the answer is.
Right, since FY12, this current year, the lunch prices have increased 45 cents
Okay, so I was close.
over those years. One year, we only did a 5-cent increase, on the other it was a 10-cent increase.
And you think about families with 3, 4 kids,
You know, at what point is enough is enough? If we sit there and said, we're not gonna increase our lunch prices, the waiver doesn't get approved because of one thing out of 12 that was on the list or whatever, what happens then? We lose our federal money?
Right. We wouldn't be able to participate in the National School Food Lunch
So they would
Program.
pull our money away.
Well, that's what I've heard. I've not seen it happen.
So even with this increase of 10 cents, we're still 16 cents below.
Yes, ma'am. Because with that, even though you're behind the 286 I talked about earlier, 2,086 cents, regardless of what the calculator says, you're only allowed to increase it 10 cents. Because they're trying to factor in what it really means for families if we were to cut a full 26 cents on the price of a meal.
Now, does the government increase the amount that they provide school divisions for free lunches every year?
Yes, ma'am, that does increase. So we're constantly chasing the target. That's always moving.
Do
Okay,
we
so
know
we'll
what that
never-
increase is each year? Do they increase it a nickel or a dime or more?
Well, I do remember one year it was $2.96. I remember saying that. I don't know which year it was, and there's at 3.16. But it does move. But each July, the federal government, when they do the federal registry, they'll give us what the meal equivalency rate is going to be. That's one thing we're looking for. And then they'll tell us what the reimbursement rates are going to be. And the reimbursement rates vary according to the continental United States, you're in Alaska, just where you are in the country, because there are different rates across the country.
And I'm hoping that when they use this amount of 316, that they're looking at taste, quantity, quality, the way we have to look at it. Is it on the same scale, I wonder? Can they make a, you know what I'm saying? Makes you wonder. Okay,
I just don't want to reach that break point to where, and I think we've already reached, yes, we're up 2%, breakfast up 12. We hope we continue moving forward with some of the new initiatives that are being rolled out. But what happens is the Sodexo out there in the world is having to keep up with new and creative ways to market and to promote food in the cafeterias to be purchased, because, I mean, at some point it's going to reach that where we're going to see a decline. And if we see the decline, then we got to go to our operating budget, or we got to do something. And it just bothers me every year we talk about this, because it's being regulated by somebody else.
I guess another question too would be income level as to qualify for free and reduced lunches. Does the income level increase so more people can qualify each year as well?
Right, because where the poverty level is determined by the federal government, that has an effect on what happens with that level. So I can try to get you more information about exactly how that process works and how they determine what that's going to be. So we'll do some research and get back to you on that
that was
one.
going to be my question, because more kids qualified for free and reduced would make a difference. Okay.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Oh.
So
Thank
this,
you.
this will come back to you for approval, of course, in the regular meeting this month,
May 22nd.
May 22nd. So we'll see where we go with the
Have to
approval,
vote on
you
the
know,
10% increase.
before we get there.
And we'll send you, Ms. Ford's capturing the questions, so we'll try to
Okay.
get that information to you in Friday notes. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
So now, student handbook.
Yes, 2017-2018 Revised Student Handbook and Conduct Code. I'm going to ask our Associate Director for School Administration, Mr. Albert Crane, to please come to the podium. He is going to review some information related to revisions to the handbook. So I'll turn that over to Mr. Crane.
Good evening, Mrs. Haywood, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor. The York County School Division Student Handbook and Conduct Code is revised and published annually in accordance with regulations and requirements established by the Virginia Department of Education. The handbook revisions are a compilation of recommendations from building principals, central office staff, and the assistant county attorney. The rationale for the revisions is to reflect changes to the Code of Virginia and to reflect changes to division policies and practices. The front and back cover, the inside of the front cover, the introduction page, testing dates, forms, and the table of contents were all updated to reflect personnel and calendar changes and adjustments to align with the 2017-2018 calendar. You have two documents before you. The first document contains a listing of all the additions and deletions. Although there were some editorial changes, That second document contains only those pages in the handbook that have been changed substantively. Please note that all additions and deletions are in red with deletions lined through. We will begin on page 1 of the document entitled 2017-2018 Student Handbook Changes. Page 1 contains the addition of the verbiage "intend total" to when parents will receive attendance letters. This is because they receive letters when students accumulate 5 unexcused absences and 10 total absences. This was updated to align with current practice for sending letters to students with excessive absences. Page 3 contains the addition of the verbiage "at no cost to the student" and illustrates that all 10th graders take the PSAT. This was the result of the school board's approval of funding for this initiative beginning in FY17. Page 4 contains the addition of a web link to our website that provides information related to the HPV vaccine that is now recommended for rising 6th grade students in order to comply with the Virginia Department of Education requirement to notify parents. Page 11 contains an added statement requiring nurses to make personal contact with parents at the end of the school year before disposing of unused medications. It also informs parents that medications will be destroyed if they are not picked up after contact has been made. Page 11 also contains the addition of the Virginia Department of Education and Code of Virginia requirement to include students diagnosed with cancer or who sustain concussions for any reason to be gradually reintroduced to cognitive demands, also known as the Return to Learn protocol. Page 17 contains the new deadlines for the out-of-zone attendance applications to reflect the revision of the standard operating procedure entitled Attendance Out-of-Zone and Non-Resident Students. This has replaced the long-standing practice of accepting applications during the entire school year. Parents were notified of this change through reminder letters to the parents of current out-of-zone students, information posted on the enrollment page of the York County School Division website, and verbally when parents inquire about out-of-zone attendance. Parents are receiving notification of decisions beginning May 1st each school year. This SOP was implemented due to the issues that arise related to creating class lists, calculating class sizes, and determining appropriate staffing. On page 18, verbiage related to plagiarism was deleted as web-based services are no longer used. Page 18 also has the addition of the words earbuds and headphones to the list of items regulated under the Bring Your Own Technology policy. This was done to illustrate the expectations regarding accessories as well. Page 22 contains the addition of verbiage that notifies parents that they can elect to have their students' SAT and ACT scores excluded from their transcript. This aligns with the law change and current policy. Page 23 contains terminology changes related to school quality profiles. As you know, the Virginia Department of Education formally measures schools by producing what was termed the school report card. It is now called the school quality profile and contains additional and changed measurements as illustrated here. Page 25 contains additional verbiage related to the sex offender registry notification to include that registered sex offenders are prohibited from being on school board property. We have also provided a web link for parents to the sex offender registry. Also on page 25, the term emotional disturbance has been changed to emotional disability to reflect the change in terminology related to students with emotional disabilities. As I continue on page 25 to page 26, the verbiage was changed to clarify procedures related to students who transfer to the division with IEPs and information on referrals for child studies. On page 28, verbiage was changed to clarify the SOL tests that are currently administered to elementary and middle school students. The term LEP, Limited English Proficient, was also changed to English Language Learners to reflect terminology changes. Page 36 contains an updated description of the instructional program at the York Elementary School Math, Science, and Technology Magnet. Page 40 has an additional requirement added for students who are seeking applied studies diplomas to reflect the Virginia Department of Education requirements fully. Page 40 also contains a terminology change as the GED, General Education Development Certificate, is now termed HSC, High School Equivalency Credential. On page 45 and on to 46, an additional student responsibility was added in order to encourage students to report instances of bullying, threats, or harassment. On page 50, language was deleted requiring schools to report certain violations of the Student Conduct Code to law enforcement because it is not mandatory for all violations to be reported. This is because we are trying to ensure consistency regarding what is reported to law enforcement. I will discuss this in more detail later in the presentation. Also on page 50, language was deleted because the information is no longer listed in the Code of Virginia, and the statement regarding mandatory reporting of theft to law enforcement was deleted. Again, I will share additional information regarding reports to law enforcement later in this presentation. Also on page 50, a statement has been added that juveniles may be prosecuted as adults for certain crimes to meet the Code of Virginia requirement regarding parental notification. On page 51, under the introduction, School Board Policy File JFC information was added to illustrate the purview of school rules that can extend beyond the school day on school grounds and beyond the school in certain circumstances. One example would be students that are participating in field trips or athletic events off school grounds. On pages 52 to 63, 2 footnotes have changed. The first is the addition of in-school suspension, ISS, as a disciplinary consequence. Therefore, it is important to know the difference between ATS, alternate to suspension, and ISS, in-school suspension. ATS is a short-term removal from the classroom of less than 1/2 day, school day, that is not considered a suspension. ISS is a short-term removal of 1/2 day or more, but not more than 3 days. ISS is considered a suspension, therefore students will be denied school privileges or participation in school activities during their assigned ISS. The second footnote that changed is the 2-star footnote. That footnote previously identified offenses that were required to be reported to law enforcement at only the middle and high school levels. It has been replaced with a footnote to consult the Department of School Administration before reporting the offenses. This is to ensure consistency with regard to what is reported to law enforcement at all levels, including elementary schools. Page 52 contains verbiage changes and code changes. You will see many of these coding changes as we continue through the presentation. This is because our codes have been updated to align with the changes to the Virginia Department of Education's Discipline, Crime, and Violence Crosswalk of Offenses, which lists offense codes recognized by the Virginia Department of Education. The following 3 slides contain the addition of the bullying definition on page 53 to this section. This was changed to align with the Virginia Department of Education and Code of Virginia definitions. And I'll pause there for a moment because that is 3 slides. Continuing on page 54. Page 54 illustrates code changes as well as the additional verbiage to clarify the breaking and entering section. Again, this was to align with Virginia Department of Education codes. The following 3 slides contain the addition of descriptors on pages 54 and 55 for the disorderly category infraction codes to help clarify for administrators when they are selecting which code to use for offenses within this category. As you can see on this slide, we've listed descriptors for D1C and D2C. On the next slide, we've listed the descriptors for D3C and D4C. On the next slide, we've listed the remaining disorderly codes, D5C, D6C, and D8C. The reason why these were so important is because, as you can see, some of those could run together if you don't have some very descriptive descriptors there that really illustrate the meaning of each. And so those were added for that purpose. Page 55 contains a deletion of the term cannabinoid agents and adds synthetic drugs such as bath salts or spice. This is to reflect changes to the Code of Virginia. The verbiage including Schedule 3 and synthetic drugs was also added to offense codes D10, D11, and D12 to account for those possibilities as well. Page 56 contains the addition of distribution of inhalants and the distribution of substances represented as drugs, and the deletion of references to cannabinoid agents. We currently have codes for the possession of these items, but felt distribution should be added as well to account for those possibilities also. On page 56 and on to page 57, the definition of fighting altercation has been revised for clarity for administrators and families. Page 58 contains code changes to align with the Virginia Department of Education codes related to inciting a riot. Page 59, also on page 58, the Code of Virginia section regarding criminal charges outside of school was added to provide clarity with regard to the law related to this offense. Page 59 contains additional language related to school threats because it previously only listed via a bomb. However, school threats can come in a variety of forms. This can also include false threats or pranks, and this was added because the division takes all school threats seriously. The codes were also changed to align with the Virginia Department of Education codes. Page 60, under the sexual offenses, the word forcible was replaced with aggravated to align with the Code of Virginia. The words of a sexual nature were also added for clarity. And a definition for sexual offense without force was added for clarity for all stakeholders. On page 61, verbiage was added informing administrators to consult the Department of School Administration prior to reporting theft for clarity at all levels. Pages 61 and 62 contain coding changes to align with the Virginia Department of Education codes. And this is with the tobacco offenses. On page 64, the types of detention has been added, and a definition for ATS has been added for clarity. As I shared earlier, ATS is a short-term removal from the classroom of less than 1/2 school day that is not considered a suspension. Page 65 has verbiage deleted to align with current practice. During law enforcement investigations, it is our practice to make every effort to contact parents to have them present. And if parents cannot be located, then administrators sit in with the students during investigation. Page 65 has the addition also of ISS. As I shared earlier, ISS, or in-school suspension, is a short-term removal of 1/2 day or more, but not more than 3 days. ISS is considered a suspension, therefore students will be denied school privileges or participation in school activities during their assigned ISS. Page 65 also contains additional language prohibiting students from attending activities where York County School Division schools are used, including parks and recreation activities during suspensions. Finally, on page 65, last one on 65, language was deleted regarding the length of suspensions because this information is included in the definition of suspensions, and this was removed to eliminate redundancy. Several changes were made on pages 65 and 66 to clarify the difference between a short-term suspension and a long-term suspension. A short-term suspension is a suspension of 10 days or less, and a long-term suspension is a suspension of more than 10 days. This also clarifies the appeals process. Additional language was also added to clarify the purpose of an administrative review, or also an administrative review. This concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
I have just one. I'm glad to see we have, and I think we're doing this, the student that wants to be suspended, and now we have the ability to get 2 days, but you don't spend it in school, but out in the neighborhood somewhere. But does this drive a staff person? Do we have to have now a separate room with a staff person managing this in-school suspension component?
We currently have ATS staff members, and they would be housed there as well.
Same thing. Okay, so we're not adding additional staff. We're just going to utilize that staff person a little bit more to use this in-school suspension mechanism.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And this is a handbook that's given out every year to every student,
Yes,
correct?
sir.
So 12,000 something copies, 2,600 copies.
650 kids.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to sign them with the
Right.
parents and send that copy back to their
They're
students.
they're supposed to
Have
read
y'all
it
looked
and
at the,
sign it.
at the options of doing that electronically and how that would work if you tried to do it that way with putting it online and saying, hey, you have to review this and send this back with your parents to sign it? I mean, have we looked at that ever?
We have it on our website. It's
Yeah.
it's maintained on our website all year. Some divisions have actually gone that route. However, some of this stuff it's important to have in writing and to have in their hands. And
Right,
so-
I mean, you could also have copies at the school, extra copies for those that don't have electronic, the availability to get it electronically, to provide it to those, and that would cut down, oh my gosh, a lot. But I didn't know if you actually looked at that or not.
If I may add some clarity, I think we're required to give them it in writing. They can opt to do it online, and I'll check that to be sure, but I think the current code requires us to give it to them.
They have the hard
They have the hard copy.
We were talking last time, seems like we have these student hearings and it becomes obvious very often that parents or the child haven't read the handbook, or a lot of this could have been avoided. So I mentioned before, I don't know if there's a way we can be more, it's kind of like hand holding, but it is what it is, be more proactive and whether it's, you know, a message out to the parents at the beginning of the year, do it a couple of times, make sure you read your, you know, because honestly, how many times have we sat here in a student hearing, and if they had just read it, you know, the parents just didn't even realize it, or the child didn't realize it, so and our hands are kind of tied at that point, so.
Also,
For what it's worth, maybe think about doing something like that, trying to get out and spoon feed it a little more if we can.
and I always wonder too, every year the handbook gets thicker and thicker and thicker. At what point do you decide as a school division to split the handbook into two different parts? You got your administrative part that's got all the, just the days at the school, but then you got your disciplinary piece. You got your handbook
Then you
of,
got to hold on to 2 books.
well, yes, but I mean, then it becomes specific and it doesn't get lost in this big 58 page, 59, 64 page, whatever it is. I mean, that's a pretty thick document. And unfortunately, Robbie's trying to touch on the fact that, I mean, yeah, how many copies go home and they're just, you know, they never make it into the, no one ever looks at
And
it.
we don't even know, even with 2 books,
But
we
if you-
don't know what's going to get read, so.
But if you had a specific book that said disciplinary, I don't know.
I've got 2 I hear you. I got 2 questions. One, on page 12, no, I'm sorry, 22, with respect to the secondary school transcript. So if a parent elects not to have standardized test, the SAT or whatever, on the transcript, once they sign that waiver, and suppose they send that transcript to so many schools, they can't come back later and say, now put it on the transcript for this particular school. Once they send that waiver, it's the same for all, and wherever they send it to.
But it is the same for all, and that is policy that came before you all for discussion back in March.
I
And
thought I'd heard
actually,
it before, but I wanna clarify,
final
'cause it's-
approval occurs in
Yeah,
May. So, so obviously, this is pending the board's approval of
But once they make that
policy.
decision, that's
Yes,
it,
yeah.
it's no, I want to do it for these, but then you
Yeah.
put it back on for the others. Okay. It appears that the changes you're recommending to me are, again, clarification, but you're tightening it up, so to speak, and making it more specific in certain areas. Besides the trying to follow along with the state guidelines, have we seen an increase? And whether it's our hearings or just what you all see administratively, have we seen additional concerns coming from our students that we need to tighten this up?
I've not had specific concerns coming from students that they weren't aware as much, other than the conversations we hear at the administrative hearings from parents. And that, again, that's a matter of them reading the book. And so,
I would just like to echo what Robbie was saying. I do think we need to spoon feed the folks a little bit. Maybe that's at back to school night. If the principals could tell the parents, please read your student handbook with your children, because a lot of times we will see the same thing. Okay, Christmas rolls around, an elementary school child or somebody gets a knife for Christmas and brings it to school for show and tell or something like that. And then the parents are confused, well, why is my child being suspended? So I think if we could just say there are a lot of, things that do occur that could have been prevented had you known that the student handbook lays it all out there.
Well, even if we still had the video program like we used to have at York High School, students, they could do little commercials to put out there of just these little snippets of these little, these issues that we run into all the time. Bringing a knife to school, something like that.
Or-
Whether it's cartoonish or acting or
Comments
whatever.
on a cell phone that they shouldn't put on a cell phone.
That too, yeah. If we had
exactly.
something like that, I think they would relate to it better, but it's a shame we don't have that program still, but.
But it's also educating the parents.
Yeah, it is.
There's nothing else. Thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Good job.
much, and we're going to
Thank you,
see
Mr.
this
Thank
at
you.
our board meeting, regular board meeting.
I think it was just yesterday we saw it.
I know it. Is there anything else for our discussion before we move to closed session? May I have a motion to take us into closed session?
Madam Chair, I move the York County School Board meet in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1 of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act to discuss personnel matters.
Second, please.
Second.
Ms. Ford, you would like to poll the board, please?
Yes, the motion was made by Mr. Medford and seconded by Mr. Richardson for the school board to convene in closed session. Mr. Richardson?
Yes.
Mrs. Kershke?
Yes.
Dr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Medford?
Yes.
And Mrs. Haywood?
Yes. Thank you. The board is in closed session.